It has always been a dream of mine to own a large collection of books and to have a large TBR of possibilities to pull from. But while I love having a lot of books, I currently don't want to add any more bookshelves into my home, which means that these stacks of books that I currently have on the floor are a problem. So I somehow need to get all of these books from the floor onto my shelves, which are currently at capacity, which is where this series comes in. Throughout 2024, I'm going to be stuffing these stacks onto my shelves through any means possible. At the beginning of every episode, I will use a random number generator to select books that have to make their way to my shelves or my unhaul pile by the end of the vlog. The easiest way to start may be to read them, but if I then decide that I want to keep them, I will need to choose another book from my shelves to either read or unhaul. The episode will end when the original books chosen from the stacks and all subsequent ones pulled from shelves have made their way to either their new home on a shelf or into my unhaul pile. The stacks may change throughout the year as I organically read, unhaul and rearrange my shelves. The pool of books to choose from may change slightly as things get moved around my library, or the pile could shrink with a big unhaul, or even grow if I buy too many books, but the overall goal remains the same. By the end of 2024, the stacks have to go. In episode 3, we scrapped 5 books and we managed to shelve a record-breaking 9 books. However, because I have filmed a book haul recently, we are starting episode 4 with an increased number at 77 books in the stacks. Good morning, my guys, and most importantly, welcome to episode 4 of Shelve It or Scrap It. Yes, I am going to address the elephant in the room, and that is that we have over 20 more books in the stacks than we ended episode 3 on, and I feel like I jinxed myself because at the beginning of book 3 I was saying like I'm kind of sad that the books, like the stacks, are dwindling because I'm having such a good time with this challenge. Well, now I have to eat my words because we are now pretty much at the same place that we started episode 2 on, which was our biggest episode to date. So we're right back where we started, which means in this episode I'm gonna want to be doing the most. I'm gonna want to be trying to get through as many of these books as possible. So we essentially have a whole new stack, and what's happened to explain kind of how we've ended up in this situation, it's a little bit later, like it's been a little bit of a longer period of time since I filmed episode 3, and that means that in that time I filmed 2 unboxings. So we have essentially 2 unboxings worth of books have been added to the stacks, as well as me filming my first book haul of the year. Now when I haul books, I leave them in a different stack because apparently I have an issue with stacks in front of my other bookshelves, and then when it gets to the haul, like I film a haul and then I put them all on shelves. So when I've been doing that, I've been taking other things off shelves to get those things on shelves, and then they've all ended up in the stacks as well. So it's kind of an issue of timing. We shouldn't have an increase this big until at least August, September, if not like at all, for the rest of the year, for the rest of the time that we're doing this project. And you know what, like I'm not even mad about it. I'm really not, because I have actually added a lot of really interesting books to the stacks that I'm really hoping are going to come up. What I'm actually hoping for is that we get some like subscription box books in this episode, because I feel like predominantly the first 2 stacks, which is this one and this one, have a lot of the books that I'm getting in like unboxings, like recent hauls, and also like they are the 2 predominant like hardback stacks, and I feel like we're just not, or in the last 2 episodes we haven't really been hitting those stacks. So that is my hope for episode 4. So I'm gonna pull up my random number generator. Our max is 76, so generate a few. I don't know why I do that, I just feel like I need to kind of get the juices flowing in the generator before I do it for realsies. But the first book we're going to be reading for this vlog is going to be number 61. So I'm not getting my wish, because that's going to be right down in either this stack or this one. So let's get counting. Looking at the stacks though, I know for sure it's not going to be in this one. So if it were to fall at the end of this stack, I may still get my wish. 50, 61. I have indeed got my wish. So I'm actually gonna do the sensible thing here and take half of this stack off. So the first book that we're going to be picking up for episode 4 is actually a very exciting one to me, and that is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli. So this one is a recent acquisition. This is the YA Fairy Loot book from February this year, and I have actually been interested in reading this one a little bit more recently because it's either the title or the cover or something has been announced for this like in the last week. So I've been thinking about this like super recently, and I know obviously, or it's very likely, that Fairy Loot are also going to do a matching edition for the sequel, and I have heard really good things about this. Like, even though it's in the YA box, I know a lot of people have said that it's like a really good fantasy romance, so I feel like it's something where I could potentially regret reading this too late to be able to get a matching Fairy Loot edition of the sequel. So I feel like the fates have aligned for this one. I cannot remember anything about it though, so I'm gonna have to refresh myself. So it's a witch and a witch hunter romance, so it's definitely giving me like serpent and dove vibes off the synopsis. There was one night where I believe a lot of witches were killed, and the main character Rune spends her days pretending to be a vapid young socialite, but she is actually helping to save other witches. One day when a rescue goes wrong, she tries to throw the witch hunters off her scent by courting Gideon Sharp, who is a witch hunter himself. The very beginning as well says the only thing more treacherous than being a witch is falling in love. We have a gorgeous Fairy Loot edition as well. I'll just do a quick little show off with an alternate coloured cover. Like, this is the standard cover and this one's like an exclusive Fairy Loot one. And then we also have end paper art in here. I really love the character art for the main character in this one as well. So I am hoping to get quite a bit of reading done this weekend. This one isn't okay. It's not a very short one. No, actually, it just looks thicker than it is. It's 406 pages, which is pretty standard sized. I think that it looks closer to 500, and the text isn't actually all that small. So I take back everything I was about to say. It's not going to take me as long as I anticipated. Fingers crossed, don't want to jinx myself. So my plan for today is that I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to put a treatment on my hair to sit for a while, and then I'm going to do some, no, I'm going to have some lunch and then do some baking. And then aside from that, I don't really have any plans today except to read. So hopefully I'll get through a decent chunk of The Crimson Moth. This is a really good first pick. I did say that though when the hurricane wars came up in episode 1. I was really excited and it went horribly wrong, and I just keep having flashbacks to that moment every time I'm excited about a book that comes up in this challenge.
I don't wanna let you down. It's the only thing I think about every morning. You know my life ain't figured out, but I promise if you stick around it'll never get boring. We'll spend nights, cheap red wine, look at flats even though we can't afford them. I don't wanna let you down, I don't wanna lose you now. Will you stay even when you wanna walk away? When times get bad, we can learn to love what we have. I don't wanna let you down.
Well, it's not quite what they were supposed to look like. Okay, so I finally finished up everything that I planned on doing today. So it's time for me to start The Crimson Moth, and let's hope that I like this one.
The only thing I figured out, 'cause everything else in my life without you would be boring, and we'll spend nights.
So I have made it a quarter of the way through this book, which I was right, it is a pretty quick read. I am rapidly making progress. I'm exactly 100 pages into it, and I guess I have mixed feelings about it so far because I've only really just started to warm up to it. At the beginning, it felt very, like my eyes literally rolled into the back of my head. It felt so much like a lot of other YA fantasy. I'm feeling like 2015 to 2018 kind of YA fantasy, but it's the romantic element coming into play that I'm actually really beginning to enjoy in this one. So it is, of course, a YA fantasy. We are following a witch who had to turn her own grandmother. It's like her adoptive grandmother, but she had to turn her over to the witch hunters at the time of this revolution, which was 2 years prior to the start of the book. So essentially what happened is that the people, or the witch hunters, I think they're called like the Red Guard, turned on the witch queens, overthrew them, and then killed all of the witches. And the witches are still being hunted and persecuted today. So the main character didn't know that she was a witch at the time your powers only come in like when you come into puberty, and she wasn't quite there yet. She made an agreement like with her grandmother that they would turn her in because they had no option, otherwise they would both die because she would have been killed for harboring a witch. So she does that, and then she's kind of regarded as this hero, this like great asset to the revolution, because she was so dedicated to it that she turned over her own grandmother. Her grandmother was quite a successful woman in this society as well. So our main character is rich, she's bougie, she's an aristocrat, she throws wild parties, and on the surface she is like a complete airhead, no thoughts, head empty rich girl. But underneath all that, she is actually the Crimson Moth, who is somebody who is operating behind the back of these guards and saving witches from persecution in the time between them being captured and being executed. So this story starts off where she is trying to find a woman called Seraphina, I think she's called Seraphina anyway, who was her grandmother's best friend and was the advisor to the witch queens. She has finally found this woman when she finds out that the guard has beaten her to it and already captured her. So she goes back to, I think it's the opera house, and tries to gain some intel on where this woman has been taken. And the guy who is responsible, he was responsible for the uprising and he's very well regarded within this guard, is Gideon Sharp, and he is the person who captured Seraphina that night. So she's trying to get some information out of him, and he thinks that she's about as shallow as a puddle and wants absolutely nothing to do with her, and also knows that his little brother, who is the main character Rune's best friend and also kind of accomplice, is in love with her. So he definitely wants nothing to do with her. But one of his associates brings to his attention that potentially she could be the Crimson Moth, who is the witch that he has been hunting, like the witch of all witches that he has been hunting for a number of years and would like to bring to justice. And they've had a theory that this person must have ties to the aristocracy. So his friend Harrow suggests that it could be her. He thinks that it's absolutely not her. He doesn't think she has the brain cells to be able to do it. But his friend suggests that he seduces her to try and figure out if she is the moth. And on the flip side of that, she is trying to seduce him to get closer to him for more information, because it has been suggested that, seeing as she has no intention of making a love match, it's been suggested that she marries somebody with the influence to get her the information that she needs to make being the Crimson Moth easier, because she doesn't have to get all of the intel herself. So the writing style, nothing special. The setup of this book, nothing special. It feels a lot like The Poison, the study series by Maria V. Snyder, especially in the way that we have the witch queens that have been overthrown and like replaced with a more military regime. It's also reminding me a lot of Throne of Glass. Like, this girl has big Selena Sardothian energy, and I feel like if we were then comparing it to Throne of Glass, it would be like a kind of Selena chaos situation going on in here, which I'm not necessarily mad about, especially because the romance is the thing that I'm the most interested in this so far. And then it's also reminding me obviously a little bit of Serpent and Dove because of the witch hunter situation we've got, although I would say that it actually doesn't really resemble Serpent and Dove in any way aside from that. It is the, like I said, the relationship that I really like. I have set up Netflix, so I'm gonna start watching a documentary in a minute. So the color changes like playing over my face is, you know, like when you leave it in standby for a little bit and it starts playing like the little cards for all of the different shows that you should watch. It's doing that, so that's why we're color changing. But I'm really liking this romance, or like this romance to be, I guess, because the male main character, the love interest Gideon, is kind of like, he's very stoic, he's a little bit unsure of himself, he doesn't participate with high society, which makes him seem like he's really aloof, but that's not the case. It's actually more that he's unsure of himself, and like he grew up until a point, like his parents were very skilled tailors, but up until the point where they started to gain renown, they were actually quite poor as a family growing up. So he has no experience dealing with people like this, and it's just not really his scene, and that gives him like an air of aloofness where everybody thinks that he's better than everybody and separate from everybody else. He's also like quite witty, but in a strong silent type kind of way, where like conversationally he's not really giving much, but what he says is either like especially poignant or he gives those little funny one-liners. I also really like how we're in this situation where they're trying to outsmart each other. Now, based on the backgrounds of both of the characters, I'm going to be really interested to see how they eventually kind of resolve their differences, because my prediction for this is that they're going to get to a point where they have to reveal the truth to each other and they're both going to be taken aback. They're both going to think that the other like doesn't accept this truth, and then they'll come to a place like where they work it out and end up together, because that's just typically how it happens, you know. So I'm actually looking forward to reading a little bit more of this later on, but for now I'm actually feeling a little bit anxious. I thought that I would maybe be doing something with Curtis tonight, but I didn't know that he'd already made plans to play games with like his friends, which is fine. It's like mentally I want a chill evening just by myself, but I've been feeling a little bit anxious over the last week, and my neighbors are having a party right now. It's always like this in summer, like I don't use my garden because they're always in the garden, and when they are, they either have music on or they're talking, and I am very, very sensitive to noise. Like it really irritates me if I can hear something. It really, really irritates me. So that isn't helping, but like I said, generally I have just been feeling more anxious over the last week. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start the new documentary that's just gone onto Netflix, the Ashley Madison one, which I think is about an adultery website that was set up, like a matchmaking service for adulterers. I never heard of it until I saw this documentary, but I love myself a documentary or a true crime or anything like that. So because I am an anxious person, I can't just watch TV. Curtis has very kindly lent me his Steam Deck. I think I'm gonna play Metropolis Mania. I'm torn between that and The Sims 2, but I just think jumping back into my Sims game right now is not what I want mentally. So I'm gonna play Metropolis Mania, which if you guys don't know, it's a Japanese game. I actually have it on PlayStation 2 as well, but it's a game that I had when I was a kid, and it's like a neighborhood building game, and you're this little man in a yellow suit and you're planning out a neighborhood. So you put like all of the houses in, and then the people will be like, we need a police station, or we're gonna leave the town. So then you get them a police station. You have to make friends with them so that you make connections so that you can help them out with other stuff. Like people in the police tend to know doctors when they want a hospital and that kind of thing. It's a cozy game. It's like it's like town building simulator, and it's the kind of thing that like I really do, like when I start playing it I get locked into it, but it's also kind of mindless enough, especially because I'm going to be starting a new game and it's easy like in the first rounds. It's a level of mindless where I can also pay attention to something else. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to be doing this for, probably until I feel a little bit less anxious, but hopefully I'll be able to read a little bit more of the book tonight as well.
Look at flights even though we can't afford them. I don't wanna let you down. I don't wanna lose you now.
I just made these really cute breakfast cookies in the air fryer, and I am hoping that they taste as good. I was gonna say as good as they look. They're a bit misshapen, but they smell really good, and that's what matters the most. The breakfast cookies were really good. So I will put the recipe down in the description box if you guys would like to try them out for yourselves. I will say though that the word cookie implies that they're going to taste like a cookie, but they don't. They taste like baked toast, because that's pretty much what they are. And it's like I was shocked when it tasted like baked toast, even though literally the ingredients are the same ingredients that I use to make baked toast. So if you go into it with that in mind, then you won't be taken by surprise, and you will probably think they're delicious because they were pretty decent. But I need to tell you that I am obsessed with this book. I am shook. Me obsessed with a YA fantasy in 2024. What is going on here? But I will say that like to call, oh, my mouse is dead, so I guess I'm not editing. I do this all the time. I get the notification that the mouse is running low, and I'm like, cool, when I go make lunch, I'll put it on charge. Do I ever put it on charge? Absolutely, I do not. So I guess I'll read a little bit more while I wait for that to charge up. But yeah, anyway, to call this YA, I would say slightly inaccurate. It's not YA, but it also isn't YA at the same time. Like writing style wise, fits perfectly into the YA genre. But the ages of the characters in this, like our main character Rune is 18, the love interest Gideon is 20, so they are a little bit older, and I do feel like I would say that this is new adult because it doesn't have necessarily the sophistication that I typically expect from an adult fantasy writing style. However, we are now seeing a lot of books published in the adult fantasy genre that also don't have that writing style, which is my kind of biggest complaint with things like that happening, and why I think that we need a new adult demographic, because when something's published as adult fantasy, I have a certain level of expectation for it. And when it has like a very kind of YA writing style, just with older characters, a little bit of sex, a little bit of swearing, to me that's not what makes an adult fantasy. But I wouldn't say that this is YA in terms of the fact it's not like 15-year-olds cavorting around on an adventure, you know, like it does read a little bit older. I am loving this, and I would say that the plot is decent. I would say that the world is decent. It's not the prominent part of this story at all, really. It is the driving force between the characters' motivations, but I would definitely say that the romance is at the forefront, and I love Gideon Sharp. Okay, the characters' love language, like it's very much like a high society, especially on the part of the female character. Like I've mentioned, she has this like socialite facade that she puts on to the general public, so it's very much a like, I'm so pretty, I'm so privileged, but also like I'm deep and I have layers kind of situation. Part of the love language of these two characters is that they gift each other clothes, and there's just the way that it's done. Like, I didn't think that that would be something that I really liked in a romantic kind of situation in a book, but I'm really enjoying it. I think the thing that I love so much about Gideon is that he is just so exasperated by her all of the time. We also have this kind of like element of longing because he knows that his brother's in love with her, okay? His brother is her best friend, and she thinks that he's just her best friend, but to everyone else, it's obvious that he's kind of just biding his time, hoping that one day she's gonna see him and fall in love with him. But he also has like, Gideon also has this other mission that is for the good of the country, and also she turns out to be the Crimson Moth, is also for the good of his brother. So he's pursuing her, but he's racked with all this guilt, and she was obviously born into privilege where the only reason that he has any kind of social standing is because of this revolution. So he just knows or thinks that he's not good enough for her because he thinks that she's this vapid socialite, that she's actually only pretending to be. And then on the flip side of that, she is getting like, she's dating him because she wants more information to help her with her cause, but at the same time, like, she's realizing that he's not this like grumpy callous brute that she thought that he was, and she is like kind of falling for him, but at the same time he's like, but if he finds out that I'm a witch, like this is just going to be catastrophic. So they're both using each other, but they're actually not using each other. They're pretending to themselves that they are as this plot goes on, and I am living for it. I'm having such a good time. I am surprised as well because I do own another book by Kristen Cicerelli. I have the dragon one. The second book's The Caged Queen. Is the second book? Yeah, the second book's The Caged Queen. The Last Namsara. So I have that and I have The Caged Queen, and I haven't read them yet, but I've heard kind of like okay, like decent things about The Last Namsara and less good things about the sequel. So I wasn't expecting this to be like groundbreaking in any way, and I know obviously like some authors have books that do really well and some that aren't as good. That's like perfectly normal, but I just wasn't pegging a YA fantasy by Kristen Cicerelli to have me in such a chokehold in the year of 2024. That was not on my 2024 bingo board, especially because I'm not saying that this is happening right now. I'm not saying that this is a 5-star, but this has 5-star potential. And if I were to rate this 5 stars, this would only be my 4th 5-star of the year. I don't give out 5 stars very often, but these would be my 2 5 stars of May. Very, very different vibes, and both very, very unexpected. Like I said, I'm obsessed with this book and I really, really want to read it, but I'm just struggling to find time. Like, when I've been staying up late reading because like I just don't want to put it down, but like I just want to curl up in a ball and read this book. However, I do have a book club live show today for Jordline's Patreon book club, which is for a horror book called Knock Knock Open Wide. So even this evening, like my evening is going to be broken up and I just want to read. I just want to read. So I only have like 150 pages left. I'm 250 pages into it. So I know that if I could sit down and get a concentrated amount of this book read, then I would pretty much read it all in one go. And that's actually what I want to do. I don't want to be reading it in like fits and starts. I want to devour the entire thing, but I'm just struggling to find the time to. So hopefully that will happen tonight. I would really love to finish this book tonight. And I would say unless something drastically terrible happens in this book in the last 150 pages, then it's definitely going to be a shelve. So I have done my workout, had my shower, got dressed again, had my dinner, watched an episode of Catfish, and now I have around 90 minutes until my live show with Jordline. So I'm going to see if I can finish Crimson Moth. I don't think I can, because I have pretty much exactly 90 pages left and pretty much exactly 90 minutes. So I don't think I'm gonna quite make it, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Good morning, my guys. I am getting ready to go out because I was gonna say I'm excited because yay, day out, but I'm actually really not. When we went out for my birthday, it was bank holiday weekend and they had lots of sales on, and I went into a store and found a shirt that I liked, and it wasn't clear whether it had the discount on it. So I was like, oh well, I don't think it does, so I'll leave it. And then in the car on the way home, I went on the website and I was like, no, okay, it does. So I thought, okay, I'll click and collect because I have to come back into town in like 5 days time. So I came back into town and lo and behold, the shirt was not ready. And then the day after, it was. So now I'm finally getting my ass in to go pick that up. But if I'm being quite honest, I have spent enough money this month with not only my birthday, but also the fact that we had friends stay for a week. So we did something like every day. And then I also I treated myself in my birthday week. So for the month of June, aside from going to see Taylor Swift in London, I truly am going to knuckle down. But for today, because we have no other reason to go into York aside from to pick up that shirt, we're also gonna get brunch and then just have a little browse before we come home, because I do have Patreon sprints tonight. So we're going like pretty early. And I'm hoping to be back around mid-afternoon because I really need to wash my hair, and I wash my hair on running days. Normally in the morning because I put like Olaplex on the blonde and stuff, so it takes a while. But because we're gonna be going out, I'm hoping to get back early enough that I can fit in my run and also get my hair washed. So the reason why I'm actually here is not to tell you about my plans for the day, it is to tell you about my thoughts on Crimson Moth, which I finished last night. But I do need to pop my contact lenses in, and I don't want to do that where you guys can see, so hold that thought. I just don't want to ick you guys out because I know some people don't want to see me poking my eyeball on camera. But anyway, Crimson Moth, I finished this in bed last night. I didn't manage to finish it before my live show with Jordan. I had to put it down with like 35 pages left, and honestly that was very hard. But my overall verdict of this book is that I loved it. Like, I cannot lie, I had a great time with it. I did give it 5 stars, so it's definitely going to be a shelve. And I think that this is also our first 5-star read for this project in general, which I was going to say is wild, but actually I've had 2 5-star reads this month, and that has doubled the amount of 5 stars that I had for the entire year. I am getting increasingly fussy as time goes on. It is a little bit of a generous 5, not because like I don't think it's necessarily worth a 5-star, but it's just not the perfect book. Like, if I was being nitpicky about it, which I don't give half-star ratings, but it would be like more of a 4.5. And the main reason for that is that I felt like the ending was just a little bit rushed. Like, that point where I picked it up, it progressed quite naturally, quite slowly, up until around where I put it down for the live show last night. And then I picked it up and I felt like everything did move quite quickly. I'm very interested because my main thing that I'm invested in is the romance. While I do like the plot, I'm really intrigued because I have read the synopsis for book 2, and I'm really interested in watching the romance kind of like develop again in book 2 based on like where it sees that relationship is going. I just really liked the dynamic between Rune and Gideon, and I did kind of explain why in the last clip that we had where I talked about it. I feel like I'm gonna really struggle with my eyeliner today, but I really loved the dynamic, and I have to admit that I'm also kind of a sucker for the guy that feels like he's not good enough. Like, he is, but he feels like he isn't. And I also really liked the fact that we got Gideon's perspective, and I really loved having that in like the scenes where he was interacting with Rune. I also feel like the plot didn't feel forced, like the place where it ended up, based on the backgrounds of the 2 characters. I kind of like where Kristen Cicerelli took it, and I'm actually less happy with Rune's behavior at the end of the book than I am Gideon's, although I understand why it went that way, and I know that she understands that like the position that she's in now is not great. I am really intrigued to see how that plays out because I'm hoping for some badassery on Rune's part, like kind of in that regard. So I had a thoroughly enjoyable experience, which I was not expecting from a YA fantasy. And I do have to say, having now finished the book, it's not that it can't be YA, I just don't understand the point. Like, I have read adult books that are more YA than this book that have been published like as adult, and it is kind of that grey area that I was talking about where like they have a lot in common with YA, but they also could be classed as adults. So it's like, where do you put them? And what is happening, I feel, is that the categorization just isn't right, which is why I feel like I personally would say it's more of a new adult than anything, because I don't feel like it fits perfectly into the box of YA. I feel like given the age of the characters, given some of the content in there, I feel like new adult is more, because it doesn't mean being a new adult doesn't mean that a YA audience, like older teens, can't read it. I feel like it just gives a more accurate indication of the content of the book and the age of the reader that is going to enjoy it, but then it doesn't have that like sophisticated writing and more complicated plot that I personally think of when I hear adult fantasy. So it's interesting as well because it was published by Magpie, which is Harper Voyager's YA fantasy imprint, and that is a very new imprint. I think it launched, was it like March last year? It was at some point last year. And I feel like this was potentially published by Magpie purely because Magpie is a newer imprint. So they have, instead of just publishing everything under Voyager, they do have the option of publishing more YA leaning things into the Magpie imprint. But I definitely don't agree that this is like a typical YA fantasy story. So now that that one's done, we are going to have to shelve it. I actually don't know where, because my paperback shelves are in alphabetical order, all organized, all next to each other, and my hardback shelves are not like that. So I'm gonna see if I can get it on a shelf downstairs, but if I can't, it's gonna have to go on my YA Fairy Loot shelf that is in the spare bedroom, because I really just don't know how many books I have on my shelves downstairs now that I haven't read. So once I'm ready, we'll go investigate that together and we will pick our second book for this one. I tried to shed a little bit of light down here, but we are hunched in the corner. So this is where I am aiming to shelve the Crimson Moth. And looking at what we have here, I do have a few options. There's a couple on the bottom shelf as well, but with the name being Cicerelli, it's looking like it's gonna go here, and there's actually two books that are contenders right where this needs to be. So we have A Spell of Dust and Smoke by Laura Burrell. I got this from the Abraxas boxes when I was a rep for them, and oh, it was like, this one's quite a short one, but look at the size of that text, man. As far as I remember, this one is a fantasy romance as well. The problem with this is that it's much thinner than Crimson Moth, and this shelf is tight, so I don't feel like that one is going to be a thing, which means I don't really have, well, I could read this. This generally would not be a good contender for this challenge, but it is Lady Hotspur by Tessa Grattan, and this one is a Henry IV retelling. The reason why this typically wouldn't be a good contender is that it's on here because it goes with The Queens of Innislea, which is a book that I've actually read, but I did give this one 3 stars, and the reason for that is that this is like, it's kind of a true Shakespeare retelling, and that it's about like family drama more than it's about any like big action scenes or anything. So I spent the majority of this book kind of waiting for something to happen that was actually just never going to come, and because of that it did disappoint me a little bit, but I feel like I went into it with the wrong expectations. And on the flip side of that, I did really like Tessa Grattan's writing. So I got Lady Hotspur and I was like, okay, cool, I know that this is going to be not super action based now, so I can go into it with the right mindset. But my thinking is now is that if I pick this up and try to read this one and it turns out that like, no, okay, actually like 3 stars is an adequate rating for this book, then I'm probably going to unhaul both of them, and that will clear up a significant amount of space. The problem though is that this, if it's anything like this, it's going to be slow, and I kind of want to wrap this vlog up. Like, I have a date in mind when I want to be done with this vlog. So then we have one other option. Is this another Fairy Loot book? Yes, it is. This one is from November 2023, and it is The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker. The only thing I know about this is that it is a YA fantasy. It is published by Hot Escape, so I do think that it will be like actual YA, although I do have another book by Kylie Lee Baker that I got from Book of the Month, and I haven't read that yet, so I don't know what Kylie Lee Baker's like writing and storytelling is like at all, and I actually have no recollection of what the plot of this one is at this point. First off, because I feel like while it would be a good idea in the long run, the fact that I don't want to pick up this book indicates that I probably should pick up this book, but I'm kind of leaning towards this one. So if I'm going to pick up this one, I need to make sure that it's actually going to fit on the shelf, because I think this again is slightly more narrow than Crimson Moth is. Am I gonna, I don't know if I am. That is just about to go in. The only other option would be The Ship of Theseus by J.J. Abrams, and I just don't think that that's a good idea. Ooh, another potential. Another something that does need to happen actually. I need to unhaul this. I really do. I did not like Sorcery of Thorns. The reason why I've kept it is because I did really like an Enchantment of Ravens. They look so good. They look so good. And then I also have the Fairy Loot edition of Vespertine that I haven't read yet. So my thought process was like, if I like Vespertine, I'll keep all of them. And if I don't like Vespertine, then I'll just keep an Enchantment of Ravens. But like, that is coming from the thought process of, if I like an author, I want to keep all of their books. And I do feel like I've kind of fallen out of that now, and I don't think that it's necessary. So maybe I should unhaul Sorcery of Thorns. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get Lady Hotspur on this shelf if I unhaul Sorcery of Thorns. Maybe we'll see if we can do that. Let's just angle you down a little bit. These are for project, so that's why they're kind of like not in the stacks, but also not on shelves. They don't fit on shelves, which is why they're not there, but also they're not in the stacks because I'm saving them for a project. So if I were to remove Sorcery of Thorns, can I get Lady Hotspur? This shelf is really tight now. I can, just about. So then this would go back on, and that wouldn't go there though. And then this would go back in, and this one would be on hold. Problem solved, guys. I guess we're going back to the stacks. I'm looking at Sorcery of Thorns now, kind of sad that I finally unhauled it, but genuinely, like, that is not coming out of my unhaul pile, because I think it's fair enough not unhauling a book that you don't think that you're gonna like because it's stunning. I don't feel like it's valid to not unhaul a book that you've read and you know you didn't like based on the fact that you really like the cover. So that's done. We are down to 75 books in the stacks. I have my number generator ready. Let's go. 20. Not bad, and potentially right at the bottom of this stack here. Definitely gonna be a hardback as well. Oh no. Oh my god, I'm so happy with this pick. It's The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. I am low-key sad that it's not April, because this one would actually have fulfilled one of my magical readathon prompts. It was on my backup TBR for the month, but also this wasn't in the stacks last month, so that could never have happened. But this one is on my fantasy Reddit TBR, and I think the prompt that it's on for is to read a book with a beautiful cover, because I love the color palette on this. It is all jewel tones and it looks bougie AF. And I'm here for it. So this one is a gothic fantasy, which I'm also very excited about. And this one is about a couple, and in exchange for them being together, she instructs him never to ask her any questions about like her family or her past. But for some reason, they do end up traveling back to the place where her family are from, like their estate, and he gets drawn into, I don't know whether it's the house itself, but it definitely has that haunting, gothic, like romantic atmosphere to it that I generally live for. Like, I love gothic fiction. The only classics that I like are all gothic. We know why. It's the drama. It's the drama, and also the like haunting, bittersweet nature of most gothic stories. I haven't read anything by Roshani Chokshi yet. This is going to be my first foray into her work. I've heard mid things about this, I can't lie. Like, I don't think I've heard any super enthusiastic reviews either way for this one, but purely based on the synopsis, the fact that like I've heard good things about Roshani Chokshi in general, and I really want to like it because I like the cover. I'm hoping and praying that this one's gonna come through for me. This one was a adult Fairy Loot pick as well, but did I put the card in? I don't think I did. It's definitely one of the adult Fairy Loot books, but I do not remember what month that it was in for. So I'm just waiting for Curtis to get ready, so I'll finish getting ready so that we can go out. But I just had a little sit down. I just opened it up to the first page, and already 5-star prediction, because the prologue of this book says, and it's literally a paragraph, so I'm going to read it to you. You warned me that knowing your secret would destroy us. At first it sat in our marriage like a blue-lipped ghost, hardly noticeable until a trick of the light drew it into focus. But you could always tell the days when it gnawed at my thoughts. You tried to comfort me. You stroked my face and curled my fingers to your heart. You said, if you pry, you'll destroy our marriage. But oh my love, you lied. I'm psyched. I don't wanna let you down. I finally have the details to share with you guys for my brand new Trover trip, which as you guys are watching this is going to be available to book. So the link is going to be down in my description box, and it will be in the description box of all of my videos from now until like next April or May, which is around the time that the trip closes. So if y'all don't know what Trover Trip is, I host group trips with them so that me and a group of like-minded individuals can go on crazy wild adventures, make amazing memories, and have an amazing time. So this will be the third Trover trip that I've hosted. I did one to Italy in September last year, and I did one to Thailand in February this year, and I'll put the links of both of those down in my description box if you kind of want to check them out. I've also been doing tons of stuff talking about the new Trover trip on Instagram, which I will also like recommend that you go check out if you want to know like a full breakdown of all of the details. Trover Trip do compensate me financially for hosting trips with them, but essentially they provide a way for my community to come together and for us all to hang out and make new friends. Like I had the time of my life in Thailand this year, and I know that my new trip, which is to Zanzibar, is going to be an amazing time as well. So the highlights of the itinerary, we have a visit to Kusa Caves, which I think is like a limestone cave with like really clear water. We have a snorkel adventure safari and a dolphin cruise. There is a walk through the, I think it's the Jazani forest, which has a particular like species of monkey literally everywhere. There is like speedboat rides, there is like a sandbank visit, there's a walking tour of Stone Town and a quad bike excursion. It's going to be such a good time. So included in your Trover trip, if you do decide to come on this adventure, flights are not included. That is the main exclusion. You get all of your breakfasts, some lunches, some dinners, which are like, it tells you the amount on the trip page. You get all of your accommodation and all of your transport between locations on the trip. So we're visiting 3 main places and all of the transport there is accounted for. We also get a tour guide that is with us every single step of the way to handle logistics, to translate things, to give us recommendations. Generally, the Trover trip hosts, like the guides, are amazing and so good at their jobs and make the experience really unforgettable. The thing that I love the most about Trover is that for somebody with anxiety, it takes all of the stress away. Like when I go on holiday, usually I worry that like I'm not making the most of my time, that I should be doing more, that I don't really understand how to get to somewhere in like the most efficient way without it being really expensive or getting scammed by people looking to take advantage of tourists. And Trover Trip takes all of that away. Like when I turn up to a Trover trip, I am no thoughts head empty. Once I know everyone's there and everyone's okay and we're in good hands, my anxiety is like completely switched off. So the way that this works is that there are a small amount of early bird slots that are available at a discounted price. I have actually increased the amount of early bird spots for this trip to make the overall trip cheaper for everybody. So for the first 10 people that choose to join me on this adventure, the spots are $2,199 US each, and your spot on the trip is securable with a 25% deposit. If you join after that, the full cost of the trip is $2,399, which to transfer it into pounds is approximately £1,886, and you can secure it with a deposit of $600 or £471. After that, the full balance is due, I think 3 months before the start of the trip, which is going to be like mid-April next year. Also should probably tell you guys when this is happening, which is between the 12th to the 19th of July 2025. So if you guys would like to join me, the link is down below. I'll leave you the links to my past vlogs if you want to see how these things kind of go and the kind of stuff we get up to. And yeah, I hope that I can see y'all in Zanzibar. I just want to say thank you as well to people, because I know that these trips are expensive. They're not accessible for everybody. They're a great opportunity, but not something that everyone can obviously take me up on. So I just wanted to thank y'all in general for your support while I talk about these things from time to time. I am making really quite good progress with the last tale of The Flower Bride. In fact, I'm actually closer to the end of this book than I am the beginning right now, which is great news. However, it is pretty much the only great news because I'm not sure that I'm actually enjoying it all that much, which is really unfortunate. But to give you guys, I want to say an overview of the plot. I don't really know what the plot is, which is wild because I'm like 195 pages into it. I have less than 100 pages to go, and it is alternating perspectives between, I don't even think we know the name of the guy that is married to this woman Indigo, but he marries this like beautiful mysterious woman and he promises that he's never going to dive into her past. Our other perspective is her best friend, and that one is set in the past, kind of leading up to, I'm assuming, present day, or the present day of this book, which I think is actually more like the late 90s early 2000s than it is like actual present day. And the only thing that I've had to reference the time that this is in is that at some point they get like a old Nokia phone with, like, he says it has a stubby antenna, which makes me think it's like the early 2000s. But in the more present timeline, we are following this couple as they go to the House of Dreams, which is where Indigo grew up. And the house itself has a presence, like weird things are happening. The house whispers to people, like it tugs people's ankles and trips them up with like the edges, the tassels on rugs and things like that. And the reason they're there is because Indigo's aunt is dying. So the husband character gets taken up. He's called the bridegroom. That's literally the only name that he's given. But he's taken up to meet the aunt, and the aunt is like, you need to bring Azure back. The house will thank you if you do. And he has no idea what she's talking about. As a reader, we're learning about Azure through this past perspective that starts when the girls are 13 years old and Azure and Indigo meet. Azure doesn't have a very good home life. She is quite scared of her stepfather, and so she spends more and more time at Indigo's house. The girls look pretty similar, and they also, it's a little bit witchy, but they're trying to gain entry into the other world, which is like the Fae world. And as the story progresses, they kind of become more and more entwined, and they always say like that they share the same soul, like they're best friends, they're like estranged sisters kind of situation. It's written in a way where you don't know if the fantastical elements are real, which we all know is not my favorite. It's actually reminded me a lot of The Furies by Casey Lowe, which is a book that I really loved. I gave that 5 stars, and that one is a thriller that has a little bit of a witchy, occult, mythological element to it, which once again you don't know if it's real or whether it's just the hysteria of this group of friends. And I'm getting the same vibe with this. It also has that like magical realism, fabulism edge to it, where, like I said, the house itself is a presence and everybody feels it, but there's no explanation as to why the house is a presence, why it is almost like a character, and it almost breathes in this story. And that is why I'm not really loving it. I'm definitely enjoying one perspective over the other, which is the Azure perspective. I'm at the point now where the girls are around age 17, and from the beginning of this book, the only thing that we know about Azure is that she disappeared. I think it was right after graduation. She left the island that this book is set on, and nobody has ever heard from her again. So the kind of plot is finding out what happened to Azure, and you're following it through the 2 timelines of the husband uncovering some details while you're getting Azure's perspective as well. And through both of these, like, you get their view on Indigo from both of their perspectives, and this like ethereal, potentially like deadly, enigmatic beauty that she is. The writing is stunning, it is super flowery, and I love the atmosphere and the level of drama that it's creating, but I just don't feel like the magic and this element of magic, the type of magic this is for me, which I mean, I know it's not because I typically don't enjoy stories like this. And also I do feel like sometimes it is a lot of text that isn't really describing very much, and because of that I'm getting bored. Like sometimes it's just like a wall of flowery text, and like it's so heavy that I feel like it's burying the content within the prose, if that makes any sense at all. So I have just under 100 pages left, and I honestly don't know what I'm going to do with myself because I've injured my foot, and if you all know me, you know literally that is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. We all know I work out a lot. One of the reasons why I work out a lot is because it helps me to manage my mental health. Like if I burn off excess energy, I have less energy to be anxious. I also get like the endorphin boost and stuff. So not being able to work out is always an issue when it arises. But I think I've done something to a muscle in my foot earlier in the week. It kind of feels like I've stood on a plug and that it's bruised, except that hasn't happened. And I left it for a couple of days, and then I went for a run yesterday, which was an amazing run, loved it, but now it's more sore than it was yesterday, so I think I'm going to rest it at least today. I haven't really done much today, and I'm going to see how it feels tomorrow and potentially rest it until the end of the weekend and see if that gets better. But man, am I twiddling my thumbs right now and I don't really know what to do because I feel like my workout is like my evening reset, and because that's not happening, I'm just like, I don't really know what to do with myself right now. So I don't know whether I'm going to finish the 100 pages of this book or whether I'm going to kind of like lose myself in reality TV or like a video game just to make me feel a little bit better, but at least we're getting a lot of reading done if we're not getting much else done right now. You want this? We'll take it then. I'm not throwing it, it's a bone. I am very, very nearly done with The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I am 246 pages in, so I think I have exactly 40 pages to go. So I have my coffee. This one is one of the pumpkin spice cake Nespresso pods that I saved from, not Christmas, autumn last year. And I'm going to start my day by finishing this so that we can pick our next book. I am enjoying it a little bit more than I was yesterday, like the last 40 pages or so. I feel like the mystery has really kicked up a notch, so it's a little bit more compelling and I'm a little bit more intrigued than I was earlier when I was kind of just plodding along and was pretty bored. So hopefully, I'm actually kind of worried because if this book ends with like a kick-ass ending, I'm then going to be torn because I was bored for most of the time that I was reading it, so I haven't had like the best time with the book. But I feel like if the ending is then going to be really good, I'm going to be torn about what I'm going to do with it. So we'll see how all of that plays out. Good news as well is that my foot does feel much better today. I'm not sure how I've injured it, but I do definitely now 100% know that it was exacerbated by my run on Wednesday. So it looks like I'm going to be out of action in terms of running for at least until Monday. I'm not going to run until Monday, but potentially I'm going to want to give it a full week. We'll see how I feel in the coming days, because if I feel as much better tomorrow as I have today in comparison to yesterday, if that made sense, then maybe I could run on Monday, but who knows. So I am going to do a upper body workout later today, which is exciting, and just continue to rest it, but do a workout that keeps me off my feet and focuses on other body parts. But anyway, that is not that's not why we're here. I need to finish this book, and also I've just been staring at this for a while. I also need to drink it. So since I finished this book, I've spent the last couple of hours kind of just pottering around because I cannot decide what I actually think about this book. I gave it a 3. It's more like a 3.5 if I give half stars, which I don't, but it's like teetering between a 3 and a 4. I don't think that it is a 4-star read for me, so I think like a 3 is accurate. But I was bored throughout the first 200 pages of this book, and then in the last 90 pages I got more intrigued. It's definitely a slow story, which I feel like when we're talking about gothic fiction, they do tend to be quite slow moving anyway, but I feel like it was a very gradual build and a very gradual progression to the point where it was kind of barely moving throughout the first 200 pages. And then as we broke that 200 page point, everything started to come to a head. Now, this story also deals heavily with fairy tales. The main male character, the bridegroom, is I don't know if he's not a professor, he's a scholar, and he studies things like folklore and fairy tales. So he tells his wife many fairy tales throughout the course of this, and also through the perspective of Azure as we're going through the backstory leading up to what happened to Azure. She is also hearing fairy tales from Indigo as well. So we have a lot of parallels between the fairy tales in this story and the story itself. We also have a lot of dark fairy tales in here. They are more like the original Grimm's fairy tales, and sometimes even a little bit darker than that. The thing that I did really like about this in hindsight is that this is almost a fairy tale of itself, and I've read quite a lot of fairy tale-esque or like modern fairy tales recently. I've read Orphea by Joanne Harris, and I've read Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, and both of them follow, while they do have dark elements, while they are a little bit more sinister, they also follow this pattern of let's go on a fun little jaunt and an adventure to kill the big bad thing or like save the princess, whereas this more had the moral of a fairy tale at its core more than it had the pattern or the structure of a fairy tale. And I do think that I really enjoyed that about it. I also really liked the development and the unraveling of the bridegroom's story, because there are things like he's going into this looking for his brother, that he swore that he had a brother when he was a kid that disappeared into a wardrobe into the world of fairy, and his parents tell him that he never had a brother. So as he's diving in to this story, as he's diving into the place where his wife grew up, he's also trying to find a way to cross that barrier and find out what happened to his brother. And as we know from Azur's perspective, they are trying to cross over into the world of Fae and like become Fae themselves. And I really liked the way that his story came to a head. The key twist of this book I guessed before the page 50 mark, and I don't even know whether that makes the book worse because I knew, or whether it was more about how we arrived at this point that was the bulk of the story. I do feel like there would have been an element of wow, or like I would have been more impressed if I hadn't guessed it, but I did feel like it was glaringly obvious from very early on in this book. So I don't know whether I want to shelve or scrap this, because the more I think about it as a whole, the more I think about the message and the moral of the story and the way it unravels, I like it, but the actual reading experience of this I didn't really enjoy. Like I was bored through most of it. So with that in mind, what do we do? What do we do with this book? I don't know. I really don't know. Do we shelve it just in case I do decide I want to keep it so that it's already on a shelf? Or do we scrap it and think about it and maybe at the end of the video come back after I've had time to sit with it and decide what I want to do? Like, which way do I go? It was a 3-star read. I don't even think that I made a bad decision in rating it. I don't feel like it should be a 4, which leans towards scrapping. But also, what if this kind of like, what if I sit with this and it grows on me? You know, if I were to shelve this, where would it go? It would potentially go down there, but I have a Roshani Chokshi book, which I'm assuming at this point is upstairs. I have the Gilded Wolves, so obviously I would like to shelve them together, but I do tend to keep books that I've read down here as opposed to upstairs. So I think what I'm gonna do, okay, I'll go find my other Roshani Chokshi book and I'll see where it is and what the situation is, and then maybe I'll make a decision. I'm just stalling for time essentially because I need to pick a new book and I don't know what to do with this one. So I was right, Gilded Wolves is here, but I have read absolutely nothing off this shelf. Like all of this, both tiers are still all TBR books. So I think, why am I so torn? Okay, I'm gonna take this downstairs and I'm gonna shelve it with The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. And then we are going to bring something from downstairs up here to replace where I've taken that book from. That's the plan. Here we are, back on the floor again. I think these are 2 quite small books, especially The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, but the Gilded Wolves isn't very thick either. So I think that if I play this right, I could get away with not having to read a book from the shelves and getting a new one from the stack. But what is it that I'm going to take upstairs? I'd love to move Lady Hotspur. I feel like that would immediately solve our problems, but by the same like reasoning why we've brought the Gilded Wolves downstairs, I can't then take Lady Hotspur up because I have the Queens of Innislea over here. So the only options I actually have I don't think are going to really help me out as much as I would like them to, because I only have these 2. Oh, or the Ship of Theseus that are on this shelf for no other reason than they're kind of here. So none of these I think are thick enough that I could just replace one book with these 2. Gilded Wolves is also like slightly deeper than the rest of them, which is generally just quite upsetting. And I can get the, oh, I can get the Ship of Theseus back on. Can I also get this one back on? No, I can't. Those 2 would literally just fit, but that is really tight. I am going to put the Ship of Theseus back because I don't feel like it belongs upstairs, because everything else that's up there on that shelf is a subscription box book or like a fantasy hardback. It's not the Ship of Theseus, you know? And I'm gonna take both of these up and I'm gonna see what we can fit on the shelf, because I know there was like a little bit of a gap that was bigger than the Gilded Wolves up there to start off with. So the great news is that because both of these authors being with B, if they were to go in, they would just go in like this. Oh, yeah, no, it's not happening. Okay, so that means I have this free, but do I read this? Or do I take something else off here and read that instead? You know, I really don't feel like I have any kind of preference. Is that classed as a small hardback? No, it's slightly too big. Oh, this is the one that I said had really small text. You know what? I might go for this one. So I was doing a little bit of research before I came to tell you what this was about. and I'm actually not really sure I want to read anymore. I'm going to try it, because at the very least I need to decide if I want to keep it. Like if I don't want to read it, I'm not at this point going to unhaul it, so I should try it, right? But this is a adult. On the author's website, it's listed as adult. It's an adult indie fantasy romance, as far as I can tell. And it's following, it says in the synopsis that the main character is a chosen, which is one of 12 noble-born women handpicked to serve by the cruel and mysterious King Berilius. And then there is also Berilius' second, who is Lyson, who is a young and powerful shadowcaster with a steeled heart and a fractured past. So it seems that these 12 women enter the choosing, and one claims the chosen title. So it seems kind of like more of a high fantasy selection, with undoubtedly a little bit of like Sarah J Maas in here as well, which doesn't sound bad. Like I can get behind all of that. I love a series of trials, I love a high fantasy romance, and it feels like it's gonna have all of those nostalgic vibes in the best ways. But when I was looking this up, I found a couple of things. First off, this only has 18 ratings on Goodreads, which I mean is fine. Maybe it's amazing, but I'm actually worried that it is going to be amazing, because this was published in 2022, and at the back of this it says A Sea of Black and Gold coming soon. This has still not been published, so I'm genuinely concerned that I'm going to read this book, enjoy it, and then not be able to read a sequel, because the sequel is never coming. I will start it, I will see, but I think that if I end up not enjoying this at any point, if I feel like I want to put it down, if I don't want to carry on, then I'm going to allow myself to do so, because I'm actually more scared of liking it than anything else, if I'm being honest. If I don't like it, that's actually preferable, I think, because there's nothing worse than starting a series that's just never going to be completed.
We'll spend nights, cheap red wine, look at flights, even though we can't afford them. I don't wanna let you down. Will you stay, even when you wanna walk away? When times get bad, we can learn to love what we have. I don't wanna let you down. I don't wanna let you down. I don't wanna let you down.
I am fresh from a hair wash and looking fabulous, I know. Top tip actually, if you have this towel, or if you've gotten, I don't know if all towels in subscription boxes are the same as this, but this one's microfiber, which I didn't know until we got it out recently, intending to use it for Brie. But microfiber is really good for your hair because it doesn't like snag and pull and like ruffle up your strands like regular towels do. So if you've just had this in storage, like I have, get it out and use it for your hair. It'll save you having to actually go out and buy one, which is something that I was about to do. But the real reason why I am here today is not to tell you how you should be using your subscription box towels. It is to tell you that sadly, I think I'm going to be DNFing this one. First off, I switched to the ebook this morning. Just the thought of reading this yesterday was putting me in a slump, and I just didn't want to, which is always a bad sign. But I powered through a little bit and I decided to switch to the ebook because I was just generally like, that amount of text on a page is just a little bit off-putting. So I switched to the ebook, and this in ebook form, this is over 600 pages, and I know that ebooks fluctuate in terms of page number depending on like what your settings are, like how big you have your text. So I'll just show you that I don't have my text very large. When it comes to ebooks, I feel like it's actually quite a small text size. And this book is 609 pages. I wanted to clarify that because I only made it 46 pages into the print version of this book, but the ebook version, I made it to page 101. So I do feel like I gave it like a decent amount of time, and it's not that I'm necessarily disliking it, it's more that I just don't care. I find that the writing is, I don't know if I want to say it's overwritten. When I said when I started this book that I felt like it was going to be nostalgic in terms of being like a 2015 to 2018 type of fantasy story, the writing style is very reminiscent of that and like the typical books of that period, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I didn't necessarily dislike it, I just wasn't necessarily engaging with it all that much. And I was going to give it a little bit longer because at the point where I'm at, she's only just gotten to the palace and is about to start the trials. Like, it's the first day of the trials where I've put this book down. But I'm just not compelled enough to continue. So I think that I may as well just cut my losses. I don't think like I'm massively missing out by not reading this book. And I feel like while it's not necessarily bad, it's probably fairly decent. I kind of want to move into something else. I'm not in the mood for it right now, but when I put things down, I never ever pick them back up, and that does actually kind of suck because there's probably some books that I would enjoy if I picked them up at a time where I was in the mood for them, but once I put a book down, like, I'm probably never going to pick it back up again. So sadly it is a DNF for A Spell of Dust and Smoke, but that means that we are back in the stacks and we are going to be picking a new book. And we are now up to, or down to, should I say, 74 books in the stacks. I don't feel like we're clearing through these as fast as I wanted to in this installment. Here we go. Let's generate book number 4. 24. Okay. Oh, 24. Sorry. I thought that 24 was going to be the top of this stack, which is paperbacks, but it's actually going to be near the top of this stack, which is much more exciting. 19, 20, 21, 22, oh, what? 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Oh no. Let's just get rid of this now because it's all unraveling on me. So when I said that I potentially wanted some subscription box books in this episode, Shelve It or Scrap It really said hold my beer. This one was a Locked Library book. I'm pretty sure it's from like February this year. Does Locked Library have cards in it? I don't think it does, right? Oh no, but it does say at the beginning on the title page what month this is from. So this one is from December last year. And thinking about it as well, actually every book that I've read for this vlog so far has been fantasy romance. I would say that The Last Tale of the Flower Bride is like arguable, and I wouldn't call that a fantasy romance. I'd call it a gothic fantasy, but it is definitely like very romantic in nature. And then the rest of the books that we picked up are very solidly in the fantasy romance genre. So the reason why I was not especially thrilled when this one came up is because I have read 1.5 books by A.K. Mulford before. I have read The High Mountain Court and I read half of The Witch's Blade and I DNF'd. No, it's not that I necessarily thought that the series was bad at all. It's just not written in a style that I typically enjoy because it is very fast paced, it's very plot focused, it's very action heavy, and as you guys know, I prefer my very slow moving plots. I prefer like a more character focused story as opposed to the plot, and so that series just wasn't for me. And then because of that, I kind of assumed that A.K. Mulford as an author is not for me because I feel like that is very much their style, to have very like fun fast moving stories. And then this one as well is surrounding wolves, which is something else that we know I don't enjoy all that much. So we'll see how this one goes. I am actually glad in a way that this one came up because it is the kind of thing, like, I would never ever choose to pick this up on my own because I assume that I'm not gonna like it. But because I assume that I'm not gonna like it, I should just hurry up like and read it so that if I don't like it, I can like DNF it, move on, and like not keep hoarding it for no reason. So the plot of this one, I have no recollection anymore. It is about twins called Calla and Briar who have spent their lives hiding from an evil sorceress, and they're also wolves. Oh, so like one's the heir and one's the spare. Okay. So nobody knows who Calla is, who is the spare twin, and on the way to the heir's wedding, she is hit with a sleeping potion from the evil sorceress, and I'm assuming that the other twin then has to kind of rescue her and rescue her cause, or potentially like come into her own and take over as the heir if anything does happen to Briar. So we'll see how this one goes. I don't have high hopes, but then sometimes going into something with lower expectations gives it the opportunity to surprise you. This one it's not my favorite edition of a book that I've ever had, but it's pretty, and it also has a undercover like naked hardcover design, which actually I think is my favorite element of it. Good morning, my guys. I am here bright and early in the morning. What time is it? It's 8:30. It's not even 8:30, it's 8:29. But I am here with a potentially not so great update, depending on how you look at it. I mean, it's great for me because all I feel is relief, essentially. But I've decided that I am going to be DNFing A River of Golden Bones. I am not far into it, I'll be honest. I did not read very much. Have I taken my bookmark out already? Yeah, I was like a few pages into chapter 2. So I think I was about 12 pages into this one. I'll admit I didn't really give it a fair chance, but there is just something that I inherently dislike about first person present perspective. It's a big part of the reason why I DNF'd the last book by Laura Burrell, A Spell of Dust and Smoke. I just think that there's something juvenile about it that is just tied to the tense of first person present. I just started this and it was first person present again, and I was like, I just don't think I can do it. I'm in a very particular mood right now. I don't know whether I'm feeling slumpy and I just can't find the right thing that I want to read. But we had a really good run at the start of this vlog with a 5-star read and then a book that I still don't really know how I feel about that we shelved regardless. So 2 good books followed by 2 DNFs kind of balances things out a bit. I mean, I can't just have a 5-star read for free, right? That has to be some kind of con. But we are going to give this one more shot, and I'm going to pick one more book for this vlog. And if I love it, great. Well, maybe not great, because then we'll have more than one book for this vlog because I'll be shelving. And if I don't love it, we're just gonna cut our losses until episode 5. So I think we're up to 73 books now. Turn the brightness up. So book number 4 for this vlog will be 13. So that is in this stack here. I'm not even gonna move. I'm just gonna tilt the camera down while we can. I'm getting my wish once again. It is gonna be a subscription box book as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I just rearranged the entire stack now to get to this, but it's Winter's Orbit by Everand and Maxwell. So we're throwing a sci-fi into the mix. I do still actually think that this is a romantic one though. Ooh, I thought that this was a YA sci-fi, but the blurbs on the back are by like Anne Leckie and Martha Wells, which makes me believe that it's potentially adult. And it is published by Orbit, which is an adult imprint as well. Can you leave it off on that while I'm talking? I'm intrigued to see what the writing style of this is going to be like, because as we can tell, I'm in a mood where a certain type of writing is just not going to cut it for me. Let me just check actually the writing. Okay, this is third person past tense, so maybe we'll be okay. But the reason why I was a little bit like about this is because I do know that it has princesses in it, but it's a sci-fi, so it's like set in space. It looks like it is a heavily political one as well. Oh no, it's space princes, not princesses. Ooh, it's queer as well, which I did think that it was, but I swear that I thought it was princesses. But anyway, there is a prince who is a key figure in a political alliance who is killed, and his widow is rushed into an arranged marriage with a disreputable aristocrat called Kiem, and they figure out that the prince that died, that his death may not have been an accident, and the widow is now a suspect, so they have to learn to trust each other as they work together to get to the bottom of who killed the prince. Now, as long as this doesn't go into a murder mystery style, I think that we're going to be fine. This is one that I'm kind of very ambivalent about as well. It is an Illumicrate version, and it's one that I'm kind of like open to reading, but it's not one that's been like super high on my list of things that I want to read right now. So we'll see how this one plays out. I'm only going to read probably a little bit today because I am going to, in about 30 minutes, I'm going to start getting ready to go out because I'm going to Slam Dunk today. If y'all don't know what Slam Dunk is, it is a pop punk festival. Every year it is in the south of England first on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday it is in the north, and I'm not particularly looking forward to it this year. The lineup is amazing. I think we're going to see Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, We the Kings, Pale Waves, Boys Like Girls, All American Rejects, and Yumi at 6. So I'm very excited for that. But the weather is thunderstorm warnings from 12 p.m. until 8 p.m. So essentially the entire time that I'm going to be out. And the precipitation is like 90% up until 2 p.m. where it drops to more like 50 to 60%. So it looks like it's going to be a wet one, and I am not a girl who's down for standing outside in a field all day anyway on a normal day. But when it's raining, I'm really feeling the vibe even less. So fingers crossed that something kind of pulls through and it's not going to be the cold, wet, miserable day that I envision it is. Hello, good evening. I had an amazing day yesterday. It was very muddy. It was very wet. They cancelled the car parks, like they closed all the car parks just before the venue opened because of how bad the ground conditions were. So we had a minor panic in the morning when we found somewhere to park, and we did end up finding somewhere. It was really expensive, but I feel like we made the best out of the situation. And aside from that, it was an amazing day, even given the mud. Like, I was covered, like my boots, I put boots on, they were covered in mud. Everyone had splashes all over their jeans, and I actually feel like I did really well in that situation, considering what some people looked like. We ended up getting on the barrier just before State Champs came on as well. So then we just stayed there the entire time. And we saw from right at the very front, we saw State Champs, Boys Like Girls, who were my favorite of the day, All American Rejects, and Yumi at 6. So an amazing time was had. Honestly, time of my life. It was great. But this morning I woke up feeling like I had a hangover, even though I drank nothing alcoholic at all yesterday, because I was essentially dehydrated, because with me being on the barrier, like I intentionally like wasn't drinking very much to stop myself from having to need to go pee and like lose the spot. I also didn't eat anything. I ate a Whisper, like a chocolate Whisper bar. It was the only thing I ate between like 11:30 a.m. and getting home at like almost 1 a.m. So I felt a little bit rough this morning, and so no reading has been done. Like, I was struggling to focus, my head was sore, like we just weren't fully operating up until probably about now, where I'm feeling like a little bit better. But I have been meaning to bring you a little bit of a book haul for quite some time. I keep being like, oh yeah, like I'll film an update, and then just getting more things and not filming an update. So earlier in the week I went to the library and I picked up my hold on Winter's Heart by Robert Jordan. This one is book 9 in the Wheel of Time series, and it's going to be on my June TBR because I am a co-host for the Wheel of Time along. So I have started this one. I've been listening to the audiobook a little bit, but as we all know, Robert Jordan has exceptionally long prologue, so I'm not even through the prologue yet. This one, I think the live show is going to be on the 9th of June, so I don't have the longest time to read it. So I'm hoping that I can make a dent through audio from now until the live show, and hopefully just like get through it that way. On the same day, actually, we nipped into Tesco, and I have heard that not all Tesco's have this, but every Tesco that I've been into has a charity book table, and it's normally a load of shit. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's nothing exciting. But even though we go to Tesco multiple times a week because we live so close that we do the really irritating thing where we always forget something. So I can be at Tesco literally every day, and every time I'm there I check the table. And one time I walked past and The Three Body Problem by, I want to say Cixin Liu. I don't know if that is anywhere near correct, so I'm just gonna look it up. It's Cixin, I think Cixin Liu. This has recently been adapted into a Netflix show, which I've actually just finished, and I've wanted to read this series for a while, but I'm trying not to, or I generally try not to buy the first book in a series if it's just gonna sit on my shelf forever. So I was like, well, I'll watch the show and that might give me a push to dive into the books. Curtis was also interested in reading this, so I was actually just gonna get it from the library to see if I liked it, but I saw it on the Tesco charity table, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pick it up. I know that it is quite a bit different from the show, like I'm not going into it expecting it to be the same, but seeing as it's a series that I've already been interested in, and my interest has kind of been piqued a little bit more by the show, I'm hoping to get into this like hopefully some point soon. But this one is a first contact with aliens story, and it starts off with like a group of scientists, and like science is just not working. Everything that should be given very predictable readings is not, and so they're trying to get to the bottom of why that is. There's also like a virtual reality game in here, and I'm not going to really tell you any more about it because with the show, generally TV shows tend to be like an accelerated plot. I don't know how much of the story is revealed in the show that you wouldn't know, you know, like just from reading the first book. And then the last thing I have, this is a book that I actually have out from the library, and this is a funny story. So this is from Ash. It is an Amazon parcel and I have already opened it, but this is from Ash, who, y'all, if you're familiar with my channel, you will have seen me receive countless gifts from Ash. Ash is one of my friends, she's one of my patrons, she is a wonderful, kind, sweet, funny, amazing human, and she's actually going through a little bit of a rough time at the minute, so I was like, cool, I'll send her a care package to perk her up. And so I went onto her Amazon wish list and I picked a book, I sent her some like skincare goodies, just like a general care package. And then 2 days after I sent that stuff, I think it was like maybe 2 days after I knew that the book had arrived because I checked the tracking, I received a parcel myself. So I opened it and I just knew, I knew what this was gonna be before I opened it. And Ash has sent me The Will of the Many by James Islington, which, as you'll know, I currently have out from the library because I wanted to read it to see if I liked it, because I'm trying not to buy books, so that I knew if I wanted a hardback copy, because I've only heard amazing things about this. This is the same book that I sent to Ash that arrived literally the day before this arrived to me. I don't know how that happened because Ash is in the US, so it's not like it was a Prime delivery. Like, you generally have to send things by standard delivery if you're sending them for other countries, unless you have an Amazon Prime membership in that country. So this was like a psychic moment that we both had where we sent each other the same book. So I am still hoping to get to this one sometime soon. I've heard it compared to Red Rising. I've read the first book in the Lycanius trilogy by James Islington, and that is pretty much all I know about it. But thank you so much, Ash. Now I don't need to make that decision. I have a hardback copy. I didn't realize. So I was trying to get the gift note out of this, and I realized that when I opened it, I didn't open it properly because there's something else in it. I honestly, because I saw the plasticky bit on this, I just thought that it was extra packaging for the book. But Ash has got me a jelly cat. This is my very first jelly cat. Oh my god, I look at them all of the time and I'm like, I kind of want one because they're just so cute. But so far I've restrained myself. I feel like Ash is just really delving into all of these bad habits that I try not to fall into. Like, I try not to buy myself the things, and Ash is like, no, you will have the things. So this one is the espresso cup. They're just so cute. I love the sushi ones and like the ramen that I've been seeing recently. Not that I want those ones, I just think that they're absolutely adorable. So thank you so much, Ash. You continue to be the most amazing person. I apologize if you can hear the rain. We are having a thunderstorm and I ain't complaining. I love a thunderstorm, but it's like the kitchen door is open and it's loud. But I'm coming in to give you some not great news, potentially, because I am exactly 100 pages into Winter's Orbit. Not having the best time. I'm enjoying the writing style. The writing style is good, much better than the last two books that I DNF'd. I am intrigued about the relationship that's budding between the two main characters, because we have one whose husband has died and he is marrying this other prince to preserve a treaty, and he's incredibly shy, he's incredibly reserved, and I'm getting the impression that there's some trauma there that we're going to uncover throughout the rest of the book as to why he is behaving in the way that he is. And then on the flip side of that, we have the prince, who is very outspoken, very charming. He is a diplomat, although I think all of them are supposed to be diplomats. And so when the one whose husband has died looks at his new husband, all he sees is kind of his own inadequacies and his own ways that he feels inferior compared to this guy that he's married. And then the prince thinks that his new husband is mourning the death of his ex-husband who's dead, if that makes sense. But I actually don't think that they liked each other very much. I think there is something going on there. So that is interesting, mildly interesting. The writing style I'm enjoying, but I am so lost in terms of the sci-fi. It isn't anything overly complex, but it is focusing on the politics. So the guy who's having to marry the prince, I think he's called Gianan, is coming from this place that's like a very small planet. It's very new to this alliance, and to preserve this treaty he has to marry this prince of like a more established planet, although I do think it's one that's like a little bit of a way out of the solar system, universe, so it takes like effort to get to. They are trying to make their way in this new alliance that they're both not too sure about when they find out that Tom, who is Gianan's dead husband, was potentially murdered, and this is impacting the politics and the treaty that they're trying to uphold. The problem is that I don't understand any of the finer details of the treaty. I don't understand why the murder of this husband won't allow them to be in this treaty. I don't understand what the problem in this book is. I don't understand why we have a treaty, like what's the history here? And I genuinely do not know if it's me. Like, I feel like everything I've read so far is more focused on the characters and them getting to know each other and kind of just establishing some sort of mid-ground at the minute, because they're very much dancing around each other and not really communicating their intentions. And not very much, I feel, is exploring the sci-fi and the society, the politics, and like where we're at right now. And because of that, I am really struggling to get into it, because I feel like in a political story where politics do take the forefront, I really want to understand like what is going on there, and I literally don't have a clue. And I do think that it could be me, because I spent a day recovering from Slam Dunk, like I said, no thoughts, head empty, and then I didn't sleep very well last night, so I'm kind of like tired and not feeling really with it. But I'm having no issue reading it. I just don't know what's going on. I feel so lost. So the way that I'm feeling right now, this could also be a DNF. I'm gonna sleep on it. I'm gonna see how I feel tomorrow. I will say as well that I'm not feeling the best right now mentally in general, and because of that I have been very heavily leaning towards romance, things that just don't take me too much brain power to consume but also are entertaining. And I'm not sure if now is the right time for me to read this book. Like I said earlier in this video, if I DNF a book, I've DNF'd it. If it was good, like if I genuinely thought that I was going to love it, then the mood that I'm in wouldn't really impact that. I just don't feel like I'm that kind of reader. And right now I'm feeling like this is a 3-star at best. I also feel like I'm potentially past the point of like getting a grip on the story, and I feel like if I continue, I'm just going to get more and more lost. So we'll see. I'll give it a little bit more time, but at some point tomorrow I'll either check in and let you know that it's improved and I'm having a great time, or it's going to be the end for this book and this video, which DNF heavy this time. We started off so strong as well, and then it's all just kind of gone downhill from there. I was hoping that we'd end on like at least a midpoint where I managed to finish a book, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's gonna happen. I am unfortunately coming at you guys with some bad news today, because I've taken a day to kind of think about it, and I just still don't really have any desire to pick this one back up. So it is going to be a DNF. This one's a little bit different than the others. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I'm just not really feeling this story. I forgot to mention yesterday that it's giving me kind of red, white and royal blue vibes, with this like political alliance, and like one of them being, I think he's a count, and one of them being a prince. So I feel like it's trying to go along that route with the relationship, but also have this political plot and sci-fi setting alongside. And honestly, it's the plot that's losing me. Like I just wasn't getting it. And part of this challenge is rooting out the stuff, especially because I have a lot of subscription box books. It's rooting out the stuff that I'm just not going to enjoy. And this one very much felt like it was going to be a 3-star read at most if I continue to read it. But when I'm not really vibing with a book and I do push myself to continue, if I do get to the end, I'll often rate it 2, because I'm actually resenting it a little bit by the time I get to the end. So I'm just gonna cut my losses on this one here. So that does bring us to the end of Shelve It or Scrap It, episode 4. In this one, we read, or should I say attempted to read, 5 books in total. Of these 5, 4 of them were from the stacks and 1 of them was from the shelves. And our final verdict on this video is that we started off very strong with 2 shelves, including our first 5-star read of this project and only my 4th 5-star read of the year. And then we ended the video not so strong with 3 rapid fire DNFs. And then on top of these 3 that we're scrapping, we also have Sorcery of Thorns, which we took off the shelves and I decided to unhaul. So that was episode 5, very fantasy romance heavy. Once again, kind of shocked how we keep having some sort of theme tying this together. They're all subscription box books as well, apart from Sorcery of Thorns, but that's not super difficult to do. I say it's not. We haven't had subscription box books really for the last few episodes, but it shouldn't be too hard to do because there are just generally a lot of subscription box hardbacks in there. If you guys are eager, thirsty, desperate for the next episode of Shelve It or Scrap It episode 5, you will not have too long to wait, because after this I'm going into just 1 weekly reading vlog, a little bit of a reset, a chance to catch up on my TBR before I go into episode 5 of Shelve It or Scrap It. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because it truly will not be too long until that one is hitting your subscription feed. But as usual, I do hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you've made it this far, because I think it is another long one, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.